Went into a session with the intention of quitting opiates, went to another, parallel universe or dimension where there was a lot of beings cheering and chanting for me and telling me it wasn't too late and that I could do it. And I came out of that experience and locked myself in a bedroom for a week and completely detoxed myself. So psychedelic medicines really saved my life. And if it wasn't for those compounds, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now.
Welcome, Tribe. I'm Maya Rose.
And I'm Gerald Rogers. We're about to embark on another mind-expanding episode where we dive deep into the realms of psychedelics, sex, and the superconscious.
This is a transformational experience of healing, manifestation, increased clarity, flow, and alignment.
So join us on this sacred journey as we receive the codes of transformation from scientists and psychonauts, shamans, tantra masters, mystics, and more.
Together, we'll unravel the secrets of plant medicine, sex magic, and other tools to tap into higher states of consciousness.
So why are we here? To answer the call, to share our passions and be advocates for alternative healing.
So get ready for a ride that transcends the ordinary and leads you to the extraordinary, because living a legendary life is not just a choice.
It's a sacred adventure. Hello, my soul brothers and sisters. Welcome to this episode of Psychedelic Sex and the Superconscious. And I've got dear beloved soul brothers, Charles Patti, joining us all the way from the East Coast. And he is the founder of Myself Wellness. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, which is a beautiful clinic where he transforms people through ketamine therapy and just serves people in a really deep way and transforming their life, overcoming addiction and anxiety, depression, all the things. And so it's an honor to have you here. Charles, I would love just to ask this question as we open up this thing. It's like, what's something in your life right now that you're deeply proud of?
Being a father. Listen, getting into my story a little bit when we talk about it, it was something that I never really saw for myself. And it's one of the most beautiful things that I could have ever imagined. So very proud father.
Oh my gosh, I know that feeling. I know that feeling so well. A lot of people are surprised when they hear that I have 10 kids.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so 4 of them are biologically mine, and then I've got a bonus daughter from my second marriage, and then 5 came from my current wife, Maya Rose. But I just love being a dad. It's actually my favorite thing on the planet. So congratulations. I think that's beautiful. How old's your kid?
So I have 2 boys from a previous marriage that are my stepchildren, Jordan and Cyrus. And then my son right now, he's 5.5 with my biological son.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Amazing. And I think that really informs a lot of the work that we do, and I think for me, like one of the things I'm deeply passionate about, bringing this knowledge and wisdom and the information about psychedelic therapy and psychedelic work to the world. And it was interesting this last week, my goddess and I, we were part of this beautiful experience called the Connection Experience at one of our soul brothers, Jay Fazette, who I've also hosted on the show. He facilitates, which is for couples to help them like rekindle their love, ignite their passion, and just like come into greater harmony. And my wife, Maya Rose, and I, we have an amazing relationship, and we're always looking to improve. And psychedelics have been like a really powerful tool of that. So in the middle of this connection experience where we go to our hotel room and we drop in with this medicine called 3-MMC, which is really powerful for like focusing your mind and creating like really deep awareness. And it's like mental lovemaking at the highest level. And then after that, we dropped in with MDMA and opened up the heart and the body, and had like 6 hours of epic lovemaking. It was like amazing. But in that experience, like there was this dialogue of like, wow, like at some level, we haven't fully embraced sharing this medicine that we have with our own families, because we grew up very Mormon, very, in this very Orthodox religion, and we've hesitated sharing about psychedelics. And so that even this last weekend, we're like, we need I care about my family so much. I care about my kids so much. I want them to know that the power this has. And so I had a beautiful conversation with my daughter. And I think as we dive into your story, I would love to like really kind of highlight and elicit why this work is so important for our children, for our future. And maybe even before we jump into actually having you share some of the things that led you into this work, like as you look to the future, as you look to where we're going with culture, with the world. What role do you feel like psychedelics and psychedelic assisted therapy has in that?
Well, it's funny because like I tell people all the time, listen, I can talk about mental health and I can talk about substance abuse issues, but the truth is that to me, psychedelic medicines are about the transformation of humanity to a higher state of consciousness.
Mm.
And bringing everybody like in the absolute or the oneness that I've experienced on the medicine, realizing that separation is an illusion and that we're all a part of this grander thing, source, consciousness, God, whatever label you'd like to put on it. We're all a part of it. So I think that we should probably start acting accordingly. And I think that these medicines are actually going to help people tap into that understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I'd love to kind of hear the origin story of your background. I feel like we always have like these specific turning points that redirect us in different ways. And oftentimes those turning points are initiated by a dark night of our soul. Will you share with us what that dark night of the soul was for you and that what guided you into this purpose and passion?
So, starting way back, my father passed when I was very young, and it led me to have this crippling fear of death. I was full of anxiety and depression, like so many other people. And I started, self-medicating at a very young age. It was, normal for people to drink in my family like for the children, like, oh, here, have a sip of alcohol and things like that. And after I had my first sip, I knew there was something about it. And I felt this sense of relief like instantly. So I felt like it was the missing link in my life. And it really was a downward spiral from there. I got into all of the different substances, even, hooked on opiates and heroin for a number of years. And it was really, my life was a train wreck for over 20 years. And, when we talk about what led up to it, I had experimented with other psychedelic compounds, a lot of, LSD and, MDMA and mushrooms, psilocybin throughout my younger years, but I was using them recreationally and there wasn't really like any positive intention behind it except for to party. And it was weird though, because one night about 10 years ago, I had a buddy who was coming over from Miami and was supposed to be bringing a bunch of MDMA. And then there was another molecule, which is very similar to ketamine, but it's another dissociative called MXE. And, and I tell people ketamine sometimes because they don't know what MXE is. But the truth is that night I was in a full blown, like, drug addiction at that time. And I went into that night with just thinking it was going to be a party, and it wasn't. It was something very different. I took, a macro dose of MDMA. It was probably closer to like 400 or 500 milligrams. And about 30 minutes later, a buddy busted out a bag of MXE and he was just like, "Hey man, do you want to try this?" And I was like, "What is it, ketamine?" And he's like, "Well, kind of, but it's different." And so I did a little bit of the MXE. And all of a sudden, I stood up in the living room and I looked at everybody and I said, "If I didn't know what the universe was about before, I know what it's about now." I said, "Everything's made of energy. And I'm so full of positive energy right now." And then I sat down in the chair and I looked up and there was before that, I looked in the room and everything broke down to a quantum state. I could see all of the atoms humming and vibrating and everything. It was like a scene from The Matrix. I sat down and I looked up, and above me on the ceiling, there was this geometric portal opening up. And then before I knew it, I was being lowered down like a slingshot and then skyrocketed out of my body into deep space where I made contact with higher dimensional beings and was telepathically communicated with and told about the oneness and how everything is connected. And then I got this message that I was supposed to quit taking drugs and I was supposed to get my life together because I was supposed to be of service and help other people heal. And then out of nowhere in that experience, and listen, going into this, I'm not like preaching or anything, and I'm a very spiritual person. I wouldn't put a label of being religious by any means on myself, but Jesus ended up coming into the equation. And I looked down and I was a being made of light. And I went over and I put my hand on Jesus's arm and it went whoosh. And it was like this explosion of the most loving, euphoric feeling I had ever felt in my entire life. It was like a pure Kundalini awakening. And from that moment forward, like I wasn't scared of death anymore. It really took that out of the equation for me. I ended up going back into my body that night after that. And like, I didn't have anybody to integrate it with, anybody to talk about this stuff. So it kind of like threw me a loop. And I did not get myself together after that night by any means. there was still a lot of use and, trials and tribulations that I needed to go through. But the way that it happened was just synchronicity. It was very synchronistic the way that that happened. I ended up getting hooked on opiates or heroin again very badly. And then about, you know, 6 years later, I knew that if I used DMT, that I could probably end up taking that out of the equation of my life. So I went into a session with the intention of quitting opiates, went to another, parallel universe or dimension where there was a lot of beings cheering and chanting for me and telling me it wasn't too late and that I could do it. And I came out of that experience and locked myself in a bedroom for a week and completely detoxed myself. So psychedelic medicines really saved my life. And if it wasn't for those compounds, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now.
It's such a wild story. I love it. I love it because it's like one of the most like beautiful and like mystical and fascinating and bizarre, expressions of how psychedelics like really shift and change our awareness. From that story, like, what do you feel like is the reason why psychedelics are useful in helping end addiction or break through, chronic PTSD or other things? Like why is it so useful for that?
So I'll give you the answer, and I'll start it off with an experience that really shifted my perspective on everything. So like even after I quit the opiates with the DMT, I was still drinking and using cocaine here and there. And I had always heard Terrence McKenna talk about the 5 gram mushroom trip, right? So I was like, okay, well, I need to do this to figure out why I keep doing this to myself. And so me being the overachiever that I was, I took 6 grams in pitch black silence in my bedroom, locked myself in the room under a comforter, and I started to meditate. And I went and I started to leave my body, and I went out into the middle of the universe where I became one with everyone and everything. And then I became one with God. And then momentarily I was it. I was everything. I was everything and nothing all at the same time. And when I came back down into my body that night, I realized that every single time that I was taking, outside not beneficial substances like that, I was literally poisoning a piece of God because I was an extension of the divine. And so like it was a very shell-shocking experience because I felt very lost up until that night. And it not only like opened my eyes to the divinity within myself, but I had this overwhelmingly loving feeling for myself for the first time in my entire life because I hated myself for years. And, with that new found self-love, I was like, all right, well, if we're all lit, I guess I can manifest anything that I want. And so like, I'm going to start eating right. Because like, it wasn't just drugs and alcohol for me. I almost weighed 300 pounds at one time in my life. I was addicted to everything. And the thing is that, so like I started eating properly. I started going to the gym and meditating and doing breath work and sitting in the sauna. And like, it really showed me that, I didn't have to live in fear anymore. And it completely shifted me to living from a place of love after that.
You might be one of the most extreme before and after cases, like to see the pictures of before Charles versus now, like just to create contrast. I'm just imagining 300-pound Charles, deeply addicted to these different substances. Just imagine the picture of you right now for those that are listening. How would you describe you now versus then? Like, what does the now picture look like?
I weigh 185 pounds. I go to the gym 5 days a week. I do breath work. I sauna. I eat all organic, non-GMO, drink spring water out of glass bottles, literally treat myself like the extension of the divine that I truly am. And it's like now I went from being one of the most unhealthy people on the planet to trying to raise my vibration to the highest frequency possible so we can raise the collective vibration and manifest at will. If like I am the I am and so are you and we're all it, I guess we can really manifest anything that we want. So I am manifesting a healing organism that's going to help transform humanity to a higher state of consciousness. And like, I'm not crazy enough to believe that it's true. I know that we can achieve anything because we are limitless beings. So that's what I'm going to do, but not like from an egotistical place, like me personally, with like connecting with people like you and spreading this word and giving people hope and coming from that level of stoicism where like it wasn't a cruel universe and I wasn't being punished. It was like I found my purpose in my suffering and it was just preparation for what I'm doing today. And so it's like I'm very grateful for all the darkness that I went through. It might not have been pleasant at the time, but the truth is that I wouldn't be the man that I am today if it wasn't for those situations. So I'm really grateful for all the suffering that I went through.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think that's such a sign of transformation, how we can alchemize these moments of suffering and these experiences into gratitude, into love, into actually the energy for us to create and to live our purpose. How would you define like what your purpose is right now? Like what's the driving North Star to all the work that you're doing right now?
I am an empath, and I can feel suffering, in people from across the room. And the truth is that I know what my purpose is. My purpose is to be of service and help other people and use those trials and tribulations that I went through to be a light at the end of the tunnel for other people that are still suffering out there. It's one thing that, like, I went through it all. I'd been diagnosed as, being bipolar and depressed and anxiety and, like, clinically depressed and, like, having OCD and, like, I've been through so many different diagnoses and things where there's not too many people out there that are suffering from something that I can't relate to on some sort of level. And so, like, people trust me. They know that I'm not just sitting here trying to sell them something or sell them a dream. I actually embody what I preach. And it's kind of like the proof in the pudding. And listen, like, I want everybody out there to realize I am not saying that psychedelics are the answer. Okay. I think that they're a very big puzzle piece in the master puzzle. But the truth is, I preach medicine as a tool and a catalyst. It gives people the opportunity to heal the trauma, find that overwhelmingly loving feeling for themselves. Going back to the 3D conversation of, like, it does neurological healing, it increases natural dopamine levels. But the truth is that it's like Alan Watts said, psychedelic medicines are like a telephone receiver. You pick the receiver up, you put it to your ear, you listen to the message, but then it's important to put the receiver back down and apply what you've learned to your life. So it's like we teach people about meditative practices, breath work, healthy lifestyle changes, all of the things that are the real recipe for long-term success with the medicine, because as cliche as it sounds, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to like dive into a little bit more of like I would say the formula for transformation, because there's such an extreme example in your life of like the before and after and all these toxic patterns and where you're at, all the addictions, where you're stuck, all the areas of self-loathing and disconnection that you were in, all the separation to obviously where you're at right now, where you're so much more in tune with who you are and your purpose and have so much deep self-love that's driving that. And I think that's something that a lot of people who are stuck in these unhealthy and addictive patterns or depression or anxiety or PTSD or, addiction, any of these things, they're like yearning for. And there's so many different voices out there saying, you should do this, you should do that. And there's some people that try everything and it's still not working. Like, I would love to see if you could share from your perspective and experience, like the formula or path for transformation. If someone's like, man, I'm in a life that's not working. How do I actually change this and make that change last? What are some of your thoughts in terms of keys to lasting transformation?
As our great psychiatrist and medical director, Dr. Ferber, would say, love is the healing force, right? And so, I think that finding something, finding that love within yourself, but also finding something that you're very passionate about doing in your life. Like when we have people come to our clinic, I see one of the most common denominators with people of why they feel stuck or they're in this clinically depressed place or something is that people don't know what their purpose is. Okay. And so it's like, like, what am I doing here? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And like, how come I've gone through all this suffering and why am I being punished and stuff like that? When the truth is that, like, I feel like once we realize, and this is where like that where stoicism really comes at play, is realizing that everything that you're going through is just basically like spiritual boot camp. It's training you for the person that you need to become to be of the highest level of service. So like everybody has something that they've gone through or that they're currently going through out there that they can heal through and then find that level of purpose to be of service and be that guiding light for other people that are still suffering out there. It's like, and then going back to pivoting to like something you brought up before, it's like there needs to be a big change, and we are in the middle of a big change that is going to ensure that our children have a better earth and like life to grow up in, where there's less hate and separatism and all of those kind of things that we've experienced for so long. So I realize now that like this isn't about me. It really never has been. It's always been about God or source or the creator of everything. And it's this evolution of consciousness. And so realizing that you're a part of this greater thing and not be taking things so personally. There's this saying, it says, the root of all human suffering comes from identification with the self. Like, I'm Charles and I'm 42 years old and I used to weigh 300 pounds and I was a drug addict. It's like, that's just a concept. To conceptualize that I'm anything separate from the one is just a concept. So like, always to remember to observe without judgment, keep on showing up, and like remembering that the answer is always love. And I know this is all really hard stuff for people that are really stuck in that, stuck in the muck, as you would say. But just watching the movie of life play out and knowing that everything is perfect, that you are perfect, and you always have been. You just might not know it right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's so beautiful. I have this quote that just like came to my mind that I'm like really pondering right now, and it's this idea that separation is the source of suffering. Separation is the source of suffering. It's like when we really, really like disconnect ourselves from our oneness with source and our like infinite connection there, when we disconnect ourselves from others and create like these egoic barriers and judgment. And then there's like this separation we also experience from like when we separate ourselves from the divine. And that is like, for me, one of the greatest gifts of psychedelics is the remembrance, just like really, really helping us tune back into who we really are at the core. Like, what is the true nature of our souls, and what is like the nature of like this planet and this like beautiful experience we have with these soul brothers and soul sisters that dance all around us that are just also just fingers of the same hand. It's like really, really powerful. I'm curious for you, like, I have never really explored much in the macrodose realm of psychedelics. I've never actually personally done more than 3 grams of mushrooms. I've never, done more than like 200, milligrams of MDMA. Like I've never like done a full send outside of maybe Bufo or DMT, where slingshotted me to the other side of the universe. But I would love for you to kind of share your perspective on the values and maybe the warnings for the macro experience within psychedelics.
I'll start with the warnings.
Yeah.
I know that if you are going to go on a journey like that, be in a safe setting with somebody looking after you, somebody that you really trust. It's like these experiences can send you one way or the other, where people might experience, the ego death, and they actually might think that they have died. And it's important to have somebody there to ground you when you come out of that experience and let you know that everything is okay. And always make sure, like I said, it's somebody that you trust, even like maybe a couple people that you trust, if you're going to use these things like outside of a clinic. Like, I don't really, I do my best not to advocate for outside use of, clinical use or whatever. But the truth is that most of my healing did not happen in a medical facility. So I get it. So just make sure that safety needs to be the number one priority. That being said, though, I get asked, like, what is the difference between like, like a micro dose or even like, just like a moderate dose or a macro dose experience. And for me, I needed that deep dive. I needed all of the deep dives that I did. And there was a lot of them. And it was because I didn't feel right in my own skin for so many years. And I think I needed to dissolve materialistically. I think I needed to experience these psycho-spiritual aspects of what the medicine can show you to really make my life magical and have an understanding of, God and the universe, or source, the creator of everything in the universe. I've always been a seeker, but I've also been one of those, I've got to see it to believe it kind of guys. So like, I always wanted to believe in something, but I just needed to see that. I needed to have my own proverbial burning bush experience. And macro dosing on psychedelics did that for me. And so, like, I really truly believe that a lot of the real therapeutic value of the medicine happens when we're doing these larger doses.
And will you talk more about this idea of ego death? I think most people have heard that idea, but not everyone has like a relative like experience with that. When you hear her talk about ego death, what does that mean for you, and why is that useful in our transformation?
You know, it's funny because I think that for me personally, like, people, when you hear the term ego death, it means like it completely killed my ego. And like, yeah, it dissolves your ego momentarily, but I think that ego can be a positive thing too. It's just like, you know, it's okay to have that confidence and that level of like knowing in yourself, but without thinking that you're better than, or that in some hierarchical sense that, you know, oh, I'm the most enlightened person, or oh, I'm more important in this symphony of oneness than another drop of water in the ocean of consciousness. And so, like, when I've had these kind of experiences myself, it basically boiled down to me having like a death experience where I felt like I physically died, and then became a part of that ocean of consciousness, the oneness of everything, or the absolute, and realizing that, like I said before, like Charles is just a concept. I'll give you an example of, like, I did a ketamine treatment one time, and I sunk down into this vibrational field. It was like a rainbow energy field, right? And I, Charles, completely dissolved in this field. And then all of a sudden, I popped out of the field, and I was a different person in a different body, living a different life in a different house with a different family. And I looked around and I was like, nope, not back. And then zoom, and I sunk back into the energy field. And then I popped out again, and it was a different person living a different life with a different family. And after doing that 5 or 6 times, I finally manifested back out as Charles. And I was just like, so we're basically just this rainbow energy field of consciousness. And that Charles is just like, you know, a manifestation of this, the manifestation of the collective. And that to me was like an ego death experience, because it really just showed me that, like, we are all it. We're all just one collective consciousness, and that we need to act like that and just be here to embody that heart-centered loving energy for everyone, and walk the walk, and you know, and lead by example, but in a non-hierarchical way.
Yeah, I love that too, because I really feel like when we have a healthy relationship with our ego supports us and like enjoying our identity and helps us in creating and helps us like our ego can be our greatest ally in supporting our mission, because in this game of life that we've created for ourselves, like identity and separation is actually an important aspect of it. But I feel like where ego sabotages us is when it creates pride, or we get wrapped in identities that have a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors or destructive elements. And for me, what an ego death, the way that I interpret or experience that is just that moment where we dissolve the identity, where we dissolve this attachment to the way that we've been in the past. And sometimes it actually feels like a death, and we like merge with the divine and reconnect with source. And it's just like, remembering our infinite consciousness. And then we come back, it's like, oh my God. Like when I did Bufo for the first time, it was so wild, because for anyone that's experienced 5-MeO DMT, it's like you use the word slingshot. That's what it feels like. You just breathe in, this toad venom, and if you just like the slingshot just gets pulled back, and by the time you're finished, like holding that breath, it's like my consciousness was shot to the center of time, center of the universe, and I felt like, without attachment to my egoic idea of Gerald and time and identity, it felt like I was there for eons, eternities, and just endless time, just floating in this swirling mass of beautiful, loving cosmic energy of pure potential, right? And then in that moment, there was a thought of a thought of a thought of a thought where it's just like somewhere there's this body and a being named Gerald. And like for some reason, it was like this little GPS that was pinging somewhere distant in the universe. It was like, ping, and it just felt like I'd been there forever. And so much that I had forgotten what it was like to be Gerald. But there was something that like just kept pinging. I was like, oh, I'm going to go explore that. And the closer I got, the more I got drawn into it. And the moment I landed back in my body, I was like, oh my God, I love being me. I love being me. Like of all the forms of energy in the entire universe, this is what I want. I love my life. And it's just re-energized this like joy for being Gerald, and just knowing that I could be anything or anyone or anywhere on the universe. But for whatever reason, my cosmic soul is like, oh, I actually want to experience what this being is like in this life. And I think like that complete dissolvement of my ego helped me like actually really step into greater love and appreciation. And then from that space to have space to experience transformation, right? To like really shift the way that I was perceiving myself, because at the core of transformation is what I call identity work. Tony Robbins will always say this: one of the most powerful forces in the universe is our need to stay consistent with our identity. Charles when he was 300 pounds, had a very consistent identity that he needed to live up to in order for him to like make sense of his world. And you had to like break that down so powerfully and so repetitively that this 185 pound, warrior of light is able to emerge where this is your identity. And it's just who you are. And I really love that. I would love to hear more clearly about the work that you're doing within myself wellness, and share with us like how that emerged, for you as a work and a passion. And because building a thriving clinic is a massive feat, a massive undertaking, requires an incredible team, and requires a ton of capital and energy, and behind that has to be an amazing purpose and passion and drive to make that happen. So I'd love to have you share your journey with that and what you're up to there.
So I was at a trade show in Mexico doing work in the electronics industry. I was working for an international PR company, and I was like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Like, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this. And so I went home after that trip and I had a really deep dive with NNDMT. And I had this experience where I ended up on a ship, and there was all of these little beings, and they were like showing me around, and they were showing me like outside the ship, which was in the middle of space. And there was Vishnu was out there with all of the arms DJing energy fields over the planets. And then all of a sudden I got this massive like flood download where it's like, you're supposed to quit your jobs and you're supposed to take a leap of faith, but you're not really taking a leap of faith because you're in divine synchronicity with the universe and everything's going to be okay. And you're supposed to start this like, a clinic that's going to help people heal. And so my son was 6 months old at the time. I come out of the experience and I walk upstairs and I looked at Christina and I said, so I'm going to quit my jobs and we're going to take a leap of faith to start this company because I was just told that we were supposed to do this. And she was like,
don't worry, it's not really a leap of faith.
Yeah, there you go. And she's just like, oh, you're crazy. She's like, we have a 6-month-old son and you're going to quit your jobs. And I said, I know this sounds crazy. I was like, but I know in my heart of hearts that we're supposed to do it. I was like, because if I went through 20 years worth of suffering and nothing ever worked for me, I know that I'm supposed to help people heal. And we kind of like, went back to that 10-year ago experience that I had. And so we, utilizing the laws of attraction and like, Hermetic philosophy. If you haven't read the Kabbalion, I highly suggest it. It's a really very important book. But we took the leap of faith and we were just going to start like a wellness center where we were going to do yoga and qigong and meditation classes and things like that. And all of a sudden, Christina was doing aesthetics at the time. And so she wanted to do some of that out of the wellness center. And she didn't know if we needed a medical director, but we had a mutual friend who was a doctor. And I was like, oh, well, wouldn't it be great if I bumped into him and he said he'd be our medical director? And she's like, yeah, oh yeah, that'd be amazing. Right. So then the next day I'm walking into the gym, and who's walking up? David Wilkinson, the doctor. And I look up and I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. So I went over and I said, hey, listen, do you think we need a medical director? And he's like, I don't know. It's a gray area, but do you want to work out today? And I was like, sure. Half hour into our workout, he looks at me and he's like, hey, Charles, why don't you just ask me to be your medical director? And I was like, yeah, Dave, that would be amazing, right? Christina and I had talked about getting into ketamine because I had some very profound experiences on ketamine and dissociatives like the one I talked about earlier. And we didn't know how we were going to get into it. But a week later, Dave's coming for a tour of the clinic because he was going to tour the facility, look at the space. And at the end of the walkthrough, we're in the lobby and he looks at me and he goes, hey, Charles, have you ever heard of ketamine before? And I'm like, yes, Dave, I have heard of ketamine because psychedelic medicine saved my life. And we really want to get into ketamine therapy. And he's like, great, let's do ketamine. So it's very synchronistic how it all unfolded, right? And so basically, like, staying positive and utilizing the laws of attraction every single time that we needed something, it just kept appearing right at the right time. Not that it was easy, because it wasn't. Like, we did our first, and Dave's not our medical director anymore. Dr. Ferber is now, but we needed a psychiatrist, and he heard through a mutual friend about what we were getting ready to do, and he wanted to come put his seal of approval on it. Well, Dr. Ferber's first LSD experience was in 1957 in a clinical study, and he was friends with Ram Dass and Timothy Leary, and he lived with Osho for 20 years. And so he's telling me all of these amazing stories about how the first time him and Ram Dass met, they met in the astral realm the night before they actually met in the physical body the next day. And I'm like, oh, man. I'm like, I want to work with this guy so badly.
I want to interview him next.
Yeah, no, for sure. And he goes, he's like, so at the end of the meeting, he looks at me. He's like, so tell me, what do you need me for? And I'm like, will you please be our psychiatrist? And so then he said, of course, you've got me. And so he's our psychiatrist, and he took on the role as the medical director. But, David got the ball rolling for us. And so we opened up and we did our first treatment a week before the lockdown. Okay. Like that's where it was at. Right. And I was just like, everybody stay positive. It's just a test. Let's just keep moving forward. And about 3 weeks after that, we were doing physical therapy out of our facility at that time also. And one of our clients who had a stroke years before got into his G-Wagon after a physical therapy session and drove it straight through the wall of our building. Okay. And I'm like, everybody's like, this is doomed. We're not supposed to do this. And I'm like, no, I'm like, it's just a test to see if we're going to quit. Like, everybody just stay positive, put helping the next person first, and everything's going to work itself out. And fast forward to where we're at now, over 5 years later, we've done around 15,000 treatments from our facility. Over 9 out of 10 people that we treat get the healing that they're looking for. We're getting people off of all of their pharmaceutical psych medications like antidepressants and benzos like Xanax. We're getting people off fentanyl addiction, cocaine abuse, alcohol abuse issues. And we really are a deeper dive ketamine clinic where we do mostly intramuscular shots of the medicine. And we do offer IV too. We're never going to pigeonhole anybody. And if somebody doesn't want to have an experience, we can do that too. But an intramuscular shot of ketamine at our facility is basically like an hour-long DMT trip. And so we have people having these same kind of experiences that saved my life, or that were a catalyst to help me get the ability to save my own life. We're giving people those kind of experiences on a daily basis at our facility.
I just like, my whole soul is like standing and just giving you a standing ovation. And I think it's so fucking inspiring and amazing just to witness, like what happens when you just answer the call and you just keep moving forward. And I love that idea of keep focusing on the next patient first, like just keep focusing on serving the next person. and everything just kind of evolves from there. And I think that's so deeply inspiring. One of the things that I know is like really, really critical within the space of, ketamine therapy and all of these other forms of psychedelic, intervention or transformation is really supporting people on the integration after, right? Really supporting people and just making sure that it makes sense, because it can be so disorienting, especially if you're new and you go in and have like intramuscular ketamine and you just like dissolve your ego and you just like are floating this endless, crazy, wild, massive consciousness. You come back in your body, it's and it's trying to make sense of it with our conscious mind is like really, really challenging. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear for you like aspects of protocol for integration that like really supports people in getting lasting transformation versus just like a temporary, disconnected experience. Like what's the secret?
Yeah, we're really passionate about that because, like I said, when I had that experience years ago and I didn't have anybody to integrate it properly, it really threw me for a loop. And like I was questioning my own sanity at times and stuff like that. The truth is that every single person that works at our facility, from our doctor to our front desk girl, like and all of our nursing staff, everybody's done the treatments. Everybody's well versed in other psychedelic medicines as well. Okay. And we have two integration specialists, that Gina and Jessica, who not only have, healed through medicine, but have been certified through Being True to You, which is one of the most amazing psychedelic integration coaching companies in the country. But that being said, also like Gina, for instance, used to serve Aya and 5-MeO, and I know she still serves combo. So like she comes from a medicine work background. And so it's like when people are coming to our place, it's not just like a bunch of, and listen, like I'm not saying anything negative, because like I am happy that anybody is trying to help people and they're in this field. I think that's really beautiful and it's important work. But it's kind of like with what Joe Rogan says, where trying to explain what a DMT trip to somebody is like trying to explain a kaleidoscope to a blind person. It's like if you really haven't experienced the medicine that way before, it's very hard to integrate people properly. So our protocol is like you do a medical history, psychiatric evaluation, you do 6 ketamine treatments, but you do one-on-one integration through the entire process of the treatments. And our clients even have like a number that they can call, which is to a cell phone that one of our team members has on them at all times, even if it's the weekend or anything. So if somebody needs something and they need to talk at that moment right then, they can call it, and one of us is going to sit there and like work with them and help them integrate. So like we have a very hand-holding approach at our facility. And also, we're science meets spirituality. We use ketamine therapy, but we realize the spiritual aspects of the medicine, and then we teach people about meditative practices and breath work and healthy lifestyle changes. Like I said earlier, all of the things are the real recipe for long-term success with the medicine. So we really make sure that we give as much support as needed to people when they're going through the process of their sessions.
It's beautiful. And with the work that you do, are you focused exclusively on ketamine therapy, or are you using other psychedelic tools to
So right now with my self-wellness, we are just utilizing ketamine. I look forward to, and I know it'll probably end up happening, not getting political at all, but with the new administration and RFK being very supportive of psychedelic medicines and things like that, I have a feeling that MDMA will end up going through FDA approval for PTSD and then other things. And listen, like I'm a fan of anything that works for people. If ketamine's your medicine, that's great. And we can offer that legally right now. If, something else is your cup of tea, I know people that like, if it's not natural, I don't want to do it. And that's fine, whatever your preference is. But, at this moment right now, we do have an FDA approved medication that's literally giving people some of the most profound psychedelic experiences a human being can have. And at times I find it a little bit disheartening because, there's such a focus on MDMA and psilocybin when you hear about it on the headlines, and like how we're not even near it going through to actually be able to give it to people legally. But, we have something right here and right now that people have access to that a lot of people don't even realize has these capabilities. So, like, listen, like I said, I quit a heroin addiction from a DMT experience, and I completely quit drinking alcohol from a macro dose of LSD 25. And so it's like, like it was after that mushroom experience where I had a little bit of a fall off, and I, like, went to my own personal hell and realized if I didn't quit drinking, I was going to be there. And so, like, I'm a big fan of all of the different medicines, all of the different healing modalities. And I think that people should be able to, have access to whatever is going to give them the relief that they're looking for.
That's amazing. All right, tune us into the future. So if you were to fast forward a year, 2 years from now, like where's Charles at? What's alive for you in terms of what you're creating, and where myself wellness, like take us into the future in terms of like what you are desiring next on your soul vision board.
I am here to help raise the collective vibration of this planet. Okay. And I think that the best way to do that for me is to, we've really nailed down what we do at My Self Wellness, and to expand out throughout the country and then the world, and give people access to this. And, listen, like, Christina and I have donated over 100 people free treatments at our facility. I believe that, like, we rise together, and that when people are suffering, they need access to these medicines. So, like, I would love to get to the point where I can continuously keep giving away more and more. I'm working on something outside of the country right now, also, where we will be able to offer access legally to other psychedelics, all of them, which I'm very excited about. We're going to be offering extended state DMT and MDMA therapy and things like that. So that is something that I do see happening here in the near future. But, I really, a few years down the road, I would love to see My Self Wellnesses all over the country. And then, or getting to that point and really just being there to help and support people through their healing journeys.
So proud of you, brother. I think that's so amazing. And I love that vision. And we definitely need to connect more about this, mastermind community that we're building for leaders in the psychedelic space and the stewards of this medicine, because we'd love to support you in that. We'd love to support your mission, and just really excited to continue this relationship. So as we kind of wrap up today, I would love for you to just kind of drop in, tune in right now, and just like see if there's a message from your soul that you want to offer to everyone who is hearing your voice right now. What's the message that your soul wants to share with them?
I am the I am, and so are you. We're all it. So let's start acting accordingly, and remember to observe without judgment, and that the answer is always love.
It's always love. I really appreciate that. So what are the steps for people that, would love to explore your work more, either personally or with My Self Wellness? What's the next step for people that are like, oh my gosh, I need more of Charles?
So you can go to our website at myselfwellness.com, or, you can find me on Instagram at Charles_Patti_official. Feel free to DM me or message me. I get back to people as quickly as I can. And so we'll have a conversation with you eventually if you try to get a hold of me, for sure. And I'm so grateful that we've connected, and I'm so grateful to Aaron for connecting us, because I would love to see what we can do to, expedite this mission that we're on, even though everything's perfect and it always has been, and, really support you in any way that I can as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because I feel like this vision keeps coming to us so strongly. We call it the mycelium network of, transformation, like this network of all these people that are doing this individual work, and really building bridges so that we can support each other in thriving. And that's the work that we're called to do, and love meeting inspired warriors of light like you, that are so boldly and courageously, taking on your charge and living your purpose and changing lives. And the more we can unite, the more we realize that we are stronger together. So for everyone that's joined us today, thank you so much. Join us next week for our next episode. And please remember that this is your life. So make it legendary.
Thank you, legendary explorers, for joining us on this cosmic journey today.
Your curiosity fuels our exploration of psychedelics, sex, and the superconscious.
If you're hungry for more, dive into our website and connect with us on social media. All the links are in the show notes.
And stay tuned for our next mind-expanding episode. We can't wait to talk to you again in our next adventure.
Until then, remember, this is your life. So,
make it legendary.